The massive council chamber buzzed with panic as emergency signals flooded in from every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Kira stood at the central podium, her alien skin changing colors as each new report arrived. Red holographic displays showed worlds going dark one by one, like candles being snuffed out across the stars. "Another signal just died," whispered Counselor Vex, his 8 tentacles shaking with fear. "That's 17 sanctuary worlds in the past week. These weren't ordinary planets under attack." The sanctuary worlds housed the galaxy's most delicate species, beings so fragile that a harsh word could literally kill them. The Etherians looked like living crystals that sang beautiful music, but they shattered if exposed to loud sounds or strong vibrations. Their home planet of Crystal Prime had gone completely silent 3 days ago. The Whisperlings were even more vulnerable. These ghost-like creatures existed as clouds of glowing gas that could think and feel. They lived on worlds with no atmosphere, floating through space like colorful aurora. But now they were disappearing, their essence scattered to the cosmic winds faster than they could pull themselves back together. Then there were the gentlefolk, peaceful plant people who survived by absorbing starlight through their green, leaf-like skin. They had never hurt anyone in their million-year history. The harvesters were burning their worlds with artificial suns, watching them wither and die while harvesting their unique life energy. "What exactly are these harvesters doing to them?" asked Council Speaker Nira, her bioluminescent spots flickering nervously. Vex pulled up a horrifying recording from a dying world. The harvesters looked like giant mechanical spiders mixed with living tissue. Their ships weren't just attacking. They were draining entire planets of life. They sucked up the Etherians' crystal formations, bottled the Whisperlings' consciousness particles, and processed the gentlefolk's photosynthetic cells into some kind of enhancement drug. "They're not conquering," Kira said grimly. "They're farming. These species have unique biological traits that can't be found anywhere else in the galaxy. The harvesters are turning them into raw materials." The Council had tried everything. 8. Most advanced warships couldn't even scratch the harvesters' armor plating. The peacekeeping fleet was designed for diplomatic missions, not fighting monsters that ate entire worlds for breakfast. Their elegant energy weapons and sophisticated defense systems were useless against enemies that treated planets like snack food. "We've lost contact with the Etherium defense fleet," reported another counselor. "All 50 ships." It lasted maybe 10 minutes. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Representatives from 1,000 different worlds sat frozen in their chairs, watching their most precious and innocent species get wiped out while they stood helpless. These weren't warriors or conquerors being killed. These were the galaxy's artists, philosophers, and peaceful gardeners. That's when Kira made the suggestion that shocked everyone into silence. "There's one group we haven't asked for help," she said slowly, her skin turning deep purple with desperate determination. "The humans." Every alien in the room immediately started talking at once. Humans were legendary throughout the galaxy, but not for good reasons. They came from Earth A, Deathworld so hostile that surviving there turned any species into living weapons. Humans could eat poison, breathe in toxic atmospheres, and heal from injuries that would kill most aliens instantly. But that wasn't what scared everyone. Humans were also famous for their violence and their terrifying ability to adapt to any situation. While other species evolved beyond warfare, humans seemed to get better at fighting with each generation. Their ships were crude, industrial things designed for mining asteroids and stripping entire moons for resources. "You want to invite the Deathworlders into civilized space?" gasped one representative. "They'll probably try to conquer everything." Worried another. Kira looked around the chamber at all the frightened faces. Outside, another sanctuary world's beacon went dark forever. Somewhere out there, more innocent beings were dying while the galaxy's protectors sat in their comfortable chairs debating politics. "Maybe," she said quietly. "But right now the galaxy's most gentle creatures are being murdered while we watch. If we need monsters to fight monsters, then so be it." The emergency meeting had been going on for 12 straight hours, and Admiral Day was running out of options. His scaled hands moved frantically across the holographic displays, each one showing another disaster unfolding across the galaxy. The room reeked of fear sweat from dozens of different alien species, all watching their peaceful worlds burn. "Look at this data," Day said, pulling up horrifying footage from the latest attack. "The harvesters aren't just killing these species. For fun, they're processing them like industrial materials." The assembled delegates watched in sick fascination as the recordings showed exactly what the harvesters were doing. They had massive factory ships that followed behind their attack fleets, grinding up entire planets and sorting the remains.
How?
The Etherian singing crystals were being crushed into powder and mixed with other chemicals. The Whisperling's consciousness. Particles were getting trapped in containment fields and compressed into glowing cubes. Even the gentle folks' photosynthetic cells were being harvested and processed into some kind of biological enhancement serum. "It's like they're following a recipe," whispered Dr. Thane, the council's chief scientist.
Ow.
"They need specific ingredients from each species. That's why they're targeting the sanctuary worlds nowhere else in the galaxy. Can you find beings with these exact biological traits?" Council Speaker Nira's whole body was glowing with stress patterns. Her species communicated partly through bioluminescence, and right now, she was basically screaming in light. "Our most advanced warships can't even get close to their harvesting operations. The moment our cruisers enter the system, those biomechanical nightmares tear them apart." Tactical reports made for grim reading. The Sanctuary Defense Fleet had been the galaxy's pride sleek ships, equipped with the most sophisticated technology that peaceful civilizations could create. Shields that could deflect stellar radiation, energy weapons that could precisely target individual molecules, and defensive systems designed to protect without causing unnecessary harm. None of it mattered. The harvesters had simply ignored their attacks and kept feeding. "Our weapons are designed for precision," Day explained bitterly. "We can disable a ship's engines without harming the crew, or create containment fields to stop conflicts without casualties. But these things don't care about taking prisoners or avoiding collateral damage. They just want to consume everything in their path." That's when someone said the word that made everyone uncomfortable. "Aggressive," muttered Counselor Vex, his tentacles curling with distaste. "We need something more aggressive." The word hung in the air like a bad smell. In galactic society, aggression was seen as a sign of primitive thinking, something that barbaric species did before they learned to solve problems with diplomacy and technology. Civilized beings didn't fight wars, they negotiated solutions. They didn't build weapons of mass destruction. They created tools for peaceful exploration. But peaceful solutions only worked when both sides wanted peace. "The humans," Day said quietly, and immediately felt the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Everyone knew about humans. They were the galaxy's favorite horror story, a species that had crawled out of a death world so hostile that just surviving there had turned them into living weapons. Earth was a nightmare planet where the weather could kill you. The animals hunted in packs, and even the plants were poisonous. Humans had evolved to thrive in conditions that would instantly kill most galactic species. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was what humans did with their survival instincts. While other species developed art and philosophy, humans perfected the science of violence. Their mining fleets used tools that could crack moons in half. Their industrial ships were built to operate inside the coronas of dying stars. Their construction equipment could reshape entire continents. "Their weapons aren't designed for warfare," Day continued, pulling up intelligence reports on human technology. "They're designed for moving mountains and splitting asteroids. A human mining laser can cut through a mile of solid rock in seconds. Their cargo haulers are built to survive neutron star debris fields. If we need something that can match the harvester's raw destructive power." "You're talking about inviting Deathworlders into civilized space?" interrupted Speaker Nira. "Humans don't negotiate. They don't compromise. They see a problem and they destroy it." "Maybe," Day admitted. "But right now, our most innocent species are being processed into alien enhancement drugs while we sit here debating the morality of asking for help."
Oh.
The room fell silent, except for the constant stream of distress signals coming from dying worlds. Every few minutes, another sanctuary world would go dark forever. Somewhere out there, beings who had never hurt anyone were being turned into raw materials for creatures they couldn't even comprehend. The choice was becoming clear. Even if nobody wanted to admit it, they could maintain their civilized principles and watch every gentle species in the galaxy get harvested, or they could make a deal with the devils from the Outer Rim. Captain Bo was elbow-deep in the guts of a plasma extractor when the priority message came through. His mining fleet was currently skimming the chromosphere of a dying red giant, harvesting rare isotopes that only formed when stars were in their death throes. It was dangerous work, the kind of job that only humans were crazy enough to attempt. "You need to see this," called Chief Engineer Sue from across the ship's industrial bay. Her voice had that tone that meant something big was happening. Bo wiped the superheated metal dust from his hands and walked over to where Sue was studying a holographic display. The message header made him do a double take. It was from the Galactic Council, those fancy aliens who usually pretended humans didn't exist. "Well, this is interesting," Bo muttered as he read through the formal diplomatic language. "They're asking for our help." Right. The transmission was everything you'd expect from galactic bureaucrats: polite, carefully worded, and absolutely desperate. Hidden beneath all the diplomatic talk was a simple message. Their most vulnerable species were being systematically exterminated. The Council's peacekeeping forces couldn't stop it. Sue pulled up the tactical data that came with the message. "Get a load of these harvesters," she said, whistling low. "Biomechanical ships the size of small cities, hull armor that shrugs off energy weapons, and they're literally eating entire planets. No wonder the Council's fancy cruisers can't touch them." Dr. Yu appeared from the ship's makeshift laboratory. Drawn by the commotion, as the fleet's xenobiologist, she was always excited by the prospect of meeting new alien species. But as she reviewed the data on the sanctuary worlds, her expression grew serious. "These species are incredibly fragile," she said, scrolling through biological profiles. "The Etherians are living crystals that communicate through harmonic vibrations. Single wrong note could shatter them. The Whisperlings exist as conscious gas clouds. They need perfect vacuum conditions or they'll dissipate into nothing. And the gentle folk are photosynthetic plant people who require very specific wavelengths of light to survive. Running calculations on our engineering pad, you could modify the cargo holds, but it won't be easy. The Etherian chambers need sound dampening and harmonic resonators. The Whisperling areas need complete atmospheric evacuation and magnetic containment fields. The gentle folk need full-spectrum grow lights calibrated to their home star's frequency." "Long would the modifications take?" Bo asked. 18 hours if we strip half our mining equipment and work non-stop," Sue replied. "But boss, that means we'd be going into a war zone with cargo ships, not warships. Our cutting lasers and/or crushers aren't exactly military hardware." Pilot Jin looked up from her navigation console where she'd been plotting courses. "The nearest sanctuary world is in the Lumina system, 3 days through what's now Harvester territory. Our industrial ships aren't built for stealth or combat maneuvering. We'll be flying blind through enemy space in vessels that broadcast our position to anyone with sensors." Bo studied the images that had come with the Council's message. Etherians that looked like living artwork, their crystal bodies catching and refracting light in impossible patterns. Whisperlings floating through space like aurora made conscious, their gaseous forms pulsing with gentle thoughts. Gentle folk swaying in alien gardens, their photosynthetic skin glowing with absorbed starlight. These weren't warriors or conquerors. They were artists, philosophers, peaceful gardeners who had never hurt anyone in their entire evolutionary history. And now they were being hunted by mechanical monsters that wanted to process them into biological enhancement drugs. The crew was watching him, waiting for orders. Bo looked around at his people, miners and engineers who had chosen to work in the most dangerous regions of space, harvesting resources from places that would kill most species instantly. They were tough, resourceful, and absolutely fearless. When it came to protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, "How many ships in our convoy?" Bo asked. 12 heavy industrial vessels, Jin replied, plus support craft. "And how many people are we talking about evacuating?" "You checked your calculations?" "Approximately 50,000 Etherians, 30,000 Whisperlings, and 20,000 gentlefolk from the immediate danger zones." Sue grinned and started pulling up modification schematics. Better get started then. Those cargo holds won't convert themselves. Bo nodded and opened a fleet-wide channel. All hands. This is the captain. We just got a job offer from the Galactic Council. Seems some monsters are picking on defenseless civilians, and the galaxy's finest can't handle it. Anyone who wants to sit this one out, now's your chance to transfer to a safer assignment. The response was immediate and unanimous. Not a single person requested transfer. All right then, Bo said, his voice carrying across every ship in the fleet. Let's go show these harvesters what happens when you mess with innocent people in front of humans. The alarm started screaming just as the last group of Etherians was being loaded into the cargo holds. Captain Bo rushed to the bridge to find Pilot Jin staring at her displays with the kind of expression people get when they see their own death approaching. Harvester mothership, dropping out of hyperspace, Jin reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. Distance? ... Oh hell, boss. That thing is massive. Bo looked at the tactical display and felt his mouth go dry. The harvester ship looked like someone had taken a city-sized spider and merged it with a factory. Its hull was a nightmare mixture of black metal and pulsing organic tissue. It's covered in massive tentacle-like appendages that ended in industrial processing equipment. The entire structure was easily 3 times the size of their biggest mining vessel. All refugee ships, get out of here now, Bo ordered over the emergency channel. Jump to the coordinates we gave you, and don't look back. The ship's carrying. The rescued Etherians began powering up their hyperspace drives, but it would take several minutes for them to escape. Several minutes that Bo's industrial fleet would have to buy with their lives. Sir, called Chief Engineer Sue from her station. I'm reading massive energy signatures from that thing. It's got extraction beams that could probably drill through a planet's crust in hours. What about our weapons? Bo asked grimly. Sue pulled up their tactical options such as they were. We've got mining lasers designed for cutting through asteroids, or crushers that can pulverize rock, and industrial cutters meant for ship salvage. None of it was ever intended for space combat. Then we make it work, Bo replied. All ships form defensive line between the harvester and the refugees. Target those extraction tentacles. If we can't kill it, maybe we can make it too expensive to keep hunting. The human fleet spread out. In a rough battle formation, their converted mining ships looking like toys compared to the alien monstrosity bearing down on them. But as the first shots were fired, something remarkable happened. The mining lasers, designed to slice through solid rock, actually cut into the harvester's biomechanical hull. The industrial cutters, meant for salvaging wrecked ships, began severing the creature's extraction tentacles. Most surprising of all, the ore crushers, massive magnetic accelerators used for processing asteroids, launched chunks of debris at incredible speeds that punched right through the alien's armor. Plating. I'll be damned, Sue breathed, watching her sensor readings. Our equipment is actually hurting this thing. The Council's energy weapons couldn't even scratch it, but our crude industrial tools are tearing it apart. The harvester seemed equally surprised. Its biomechanical systems had evolved to absorb and deflect the sophisticated energy weapons used by civilized galactic species. But human mining equipment was fundamentally different. It was designed to physically break things apart through brute force rather than elegant energy manipulation. Jin was flying evasive maneuvers in a ship that had never been designed for combat, using mining vessel thrusters to dodge biological weapons that could have vaporized smaller craft. Boss, this thing is trying to grab us with those tentacles. I think it wants to process our ship like it would a planet. Don't let it, Bo replied, coordinating the fleet's attack. All ships, focus fire on the tentacle bases. Sue, can we jury-rig? Any of our construction equipment as weapons? Already on it? Sue called back, her fingers flying over control panels. I'm reprogramming the cargo handling mechs to grab chunks of ship debris and launch them at that thing, turning our construction robots into improvised artillery. The battle became a chaotic free-for-all, as humans did what humans did best, adapt and improvise under pressure. Mining ships used their drilling equipment to bore holes in the harvester's hull, then pumped industrial solvents into the wounds. construction mechs designed for building space stations, grappled with biomechanical drones, and literally tore them apart with their manipulator arms. Most importantly, the human ships kept fighting even when they took damage. When the ore crusher lost its main engines, its crew sealed themselves in emergency suits and kept firing their weapons while the ship drifted. When the deep digger had its hull breached, the crew rerouted power to their cutting lasers and continued the attack from inside compromised compartments. The harvesters had spent eons terrorizing species that surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. They were used to victims who became paralyzed by fear or gave up when their sophisticated systems failed. But humans were different. They got more dangerous when wounded, more creative when desperate, and more determined when protecting others. For the first time in their expansion across the galaxy, the harvesters encountered a species that matched their brutality while fighting for protection instead of conquest. And they discovered that sometimes the most dangerous opponents are the ones who have nothing left to lose. While the battle raged outside, Dr. Yu walked through what had once been the cargo holds of mining ships and marveled at the transformation her crew had achieved. 3 days ago, these spaces had been filled with industrial equipment, or processors, and mining tools. Now they housed 3 of the galaxy's most precious and fragile species in environments more carefully controlled than any laboratory. The Whisperling Chambers were perhaps the most challenging to create. These beings existed as conscious clouds of glowing gas, their thoughts literally made visible as patterns of colored light that danced through the air. They required perfect vacuum conditions. Even a single molecule of foreign gas could disrupt their delicate consciousness particles and cause them to lose coherence. Engineer, you had worked miracles to create the containment systems, using magnetic field generators originally designed for containing plasma and mining operations. She'd created invisible walls that kept the Whisperlings from dispersing into space, allowing them to move freely within their chambers. The result looked like watching liquid auroras swim through empty air. The blue patterns mean they're curious, you explained to the human crew members who were monitoring the chambers. When they pulse with golden light, they're expressing gratitude. And those spiraling silver formations? That's how they're trying to teach us their mathematics. The Whisperlings had been initially terrified of the humans, having heard stories about the violent Deathworlders who destroyed everything they touched. But as they watched these supposedly savage beings carefully tend to their needs, their fear transformed into wonder. They began creating elaborate light sculptures that their translation systems revealed were complex equations, describing quantum consciousness theory. Down the corridor, the gentlefolk had taken up residence in what had been the ship's hydroponic gardens. These plant-like beings looked like walking flowers, their photosynthetic skin covered in leaves that constantly shifted to absorb optimal light wavelengths. Each individual was unique. Some resembled walking trees with humanoid faces. Others looked like giant flowers with arms and legs. The humans had converted their food production lights to provide the exact spectrum that the gentlefolk needed for survival. These beings hadn't eaten food in the traditional sense for millions of years. They literally lived on starlight, absorbing photons through their specialized skin and converting them to energy through a process far more advanced than Earth plant, photosynthesis. They're teaching us about biological energy conversion, he reported to Captain Bow during one of his inspection rounds. Their processes are so efficient that they can survive on less light energy than it takes to power a flashlight. Yet they're stronger and more intelligent than most species. But it was the Etherians who provided the most surprising interaction. These living crystal beings had initially been silent with terror, their harmonic voices stilled by fear of the legendary human violence. But as they realized the humans were genuinely trying to help, they began to sing again. The resonance chambers that Sue had created using modified mining equipment became concert halls where crystalline music filled the air. But this wasn't just entertainment. The Etherian songs contained information. Their mathematical concepts were expressed as musical compositions, their scientific theories as symphonies that human computers could barely begin to decode. Listen to this, you said, playing back one of the recordings for Bo. This melody they sang yesterday, our analysis shows it contains a complete theoretical framework for faster than light. communication using quantum crystalline resonance. They're literally singing us the secrets of instantaneous galactic communication. Bo paused in his rounds to watch a group of young Etherians creating what looked like a sculpture made of pure sound. Their harmonic vibrations shaped the air itself into visible patterns, creating art that existed in 4 dimensions. These beings had never developed weapons, had never fought wars, had never even raised their voices in anger. Yet they possessed scientific knowledge that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Captain, Pilot Jin's voice came over the system. The Whisperlings are asking me something. They want to know why we're doing this. They say they've never heard of any species helping another without expecting something in return. Territory, resources, slaves, tribute. They can't understand why we're risking our lives for strangers. Bo looked around at the 3 species they'd rescued, then at his crew members who were carefully monitoring life support systems, adjusting light frequencies, and maintaining magnetic containment fields with the precision of master craftsmen. These were miners and engineers who had volunteered to transform their ships into sanctuaries, knowing it might mean their death. Tell them, Bo said quietly, that we're doing it because we can. Because sometimes having the power to help means you have the responsibility to help. And because nobody should have to face monsters alone. The simple answer seemed to resonate through all 3 species. The Whisperlings pulsed with golden gratitude light. The gentle folks' photosynthetic patterns brightened with what their translators identified as deep emotional warmth. And the Etherians' harmonic songs took on the complex mathematical frequencies that meant profound understanding. In their musical language, for the first time in galactic history, the most dangerous species was protecting the most vulnerable ones. Asking nothing in return except the chance to do what was right, Dr. Yu had been awake for 36 hours straight, poring over every piece of data they'd collected from the rescued aliens. The Etherians' musical mathematics had revealed something incredible. About their attackers, the harvesters weren't individual ships working together. They were more like fingers on a single giant hand. Look at this, you said, pulling up holographic displays that made everyone's head hurt just looking at them. The Whisperlings' consciousness research shows that the harvesters share a distributed mind. Every ship, every drone, every biomechanical horror we fought, they're all controlled by one massive intelligence. Captain Bo studied the swirling data patterns, trying to make sense of alien science that was centuries ahead of human understanding. So we're not fighting an invasion fleet. We're fighting one really big, really angry creature that happens to be spread across thousands of ships. Exactly, you confirmed. And the gentlefolk's biological data shows us how it works. Quantum entanglement networks connect every harvester unit instantaneously. Cut those connections, and the individual pieces lose coordination. They'll start attacking each other, thinking the other units are threats. Engineer Sue looked up from her modifications, wiping grease from her hands. There's just one tiny problem with this plan. The quantum communication hub is located on their homeworld, which makes Earth look like a vacation resort. The data about the harvester homeworld was terrifying, even by human standards. Surface radiation levels that would kill most galactic species in seconds, atmospheric composition that was basically a cocktail of industrial acids, and gravity so intense that it would crush most aliens flat. The temperature swung between extremes that could melt lead or freeze nitrogen solid, sometimes within the same day. It's like someone took all the worst parts of every death world in the galaxy and combined them into one nightmare planet.
So,
Continued. I've reinforced our hulls with every scrap of spare armor plating we have, installed triple redundant life support systems, and created backup power cores that should keep us running even if the main reactors fail. But honestly, boss, I don't know if it'll be enough. Bo looked around at his crew, miners, engineers, and pilots who had signed up to extract resources from dangerous environments. It's not to assault the homeworld of genocidal aliens. Every single one of them had volunteered for what would probably be a suicide mission. How many ships do we need for the assault? Bo asked. The quantum hub is heavily defended, you replied. We'll need at least 6 ships to punch through their defenses, plus our best pilots and engineers. But the real problem isn't getting there. It's surviving long enough to plant the charges. The assault team assembled in the main cargo bay, checking equipment and saying what might be their final goodbyes to the aliens they'd rescued. The Etherians sang haunting harmony songs that their translators identified as blessings for warriors. The Whisperlings created light patterns that pulsed with messages of gratitude and hope. The Gentlefolk had grown special flowers that would survive in the ship's atmosphere, living memorials for humans who might not return. "Listen up," Bo addressed his team as they prepared to depart. "What we're about to do has never been attempted before. We're taking mining ships designed for asteroid work and flying them into hell itself. The environment will try to kill us. The defenders will definitely try to kill us, and even if we succeed, we might not make it home." He paused, looking at the faces of people who had become more than just crew. They'd become family, united by their shared mission to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. "But if we don't do this, the harvesters will keep consuming every gentle species in the galaxy. The Etherians, the Whisperlings, the Gentlefolk, they'll all become raw materials for creatures that see the universe as nothing but resources to be harvested. We're the only ones crazy enough to try this, and we're the only ones tough enough to survive it." The modified mining ships launched toward the harvester homeworld, their hulls glowing with reflected radiation as they entered the system's outer reaches. Behind them, the refugee vessels waited in safety, carrying the most precious cargo in the galaxy, proof that beauty and gentleness could still exist in a universe that often seemed designed to crush anything fragile. As they descended through atmosphere that would dissolve most ships in minutes, the humans pressed forward with the same stubborn determination that had allowed their species to survive on a death world. For once, their reputation as dangerous, adaptable survivors would serve the cause of preservation rather than conquest. The galaxy's most dangerous species was about to prove that. Sometimes monsters were exactly what you needed to stop other monsters. The quantum network facility looked like something from humanity's worst nightmares, a massive structure of twisted metal and pulsing organic tissue that stretched across the harvester homeworld's poisonous landscape. It sat in the middle of what had once been an ocean, now boiled away by the planet's toxic atmosphere. Leaving behind a crystallized wasteland of salt and industrial chemicals, Engineer Sue checked her environmental suit's readings and tried not to think about what would happen if the seals failed. The atmosphere outside was so corrosive it would dissolve human flesh in seconds, and the radiation levels were high enough to cook most galactic species instantly. But her mining suit, designed for working inside stellar coronas, was holding up against the hellish environment. "Demolition team, report," crackled Captain Bo's voice through the comm system, distorted by the electromagnetic interference from the quantum hub. "We're at the main structure," Sue replied, hefting the cutting charges that had been improvised from mining explosives. "This thing is bigger than we thought, boss. It's not just a communication center. It's like a massive brain made of metal and meat." The facility pulsed with alien thoughts. Its biomechanical systems processing the consciousness of billions of harvester drones scattered across the galaxy. Getting inside required cutting through hull plating that was thicker than the armor on galactic dreadnoughts, using industrial tools that had never been designed for sabotage work. Meanwhile, Captain Bo's diversionary force was fighting the battle of their lives in the toxic skies above. Wave after wave of harvester defense drones swarmed their mining ships, their biomechanical forms adapted perfectly for the planet's hostile environment. The human vessels, crude and industrial compared to the elegant ships of galactic civilization, somehow managed to keep fighting through sheer stubborn determination. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Pilot Jin, as she threw their ship into another impossible maneuver. Life support is failing in the engine compartments. The mining vessel Iron Resolve had taken damage that would have destroyed most ships, but its crew kept fighting from sealed emergency compartments, using backup systems and jury-rigged equipment to maintain their defensive screen. They were buying time with their lives, holding off the harvester defenses long enough for Sue's team to plant their charges. Charges are set. Sue's voice came through the static. But I need another 10 minutes to reach the core processors. The quantum entanglement matrix is deeper than we thought. Bo looked at his tactical displays and felt his heart sink. I didn't have 10 minutes. The harvester drones were overwhelming their defenses, and his ships were falling apart under the sustained assault. Jin was performing miracles at the pilot controls, but even her skills couldn't keep them alive much longer. "Do it now," Bo ordered as the Iron Resolve's hull began buckling under concentrated fire. "We can't hold them much longer." Sue didn't argue. She triggered the demolition charges in sequence, watching as explosions rippled through the alien facility. The quantum disruption waves spread outward like digital lightning, severing the connections that held the Harvester consciousness. Together, across the galaxy, the effect was immediate and catastrophic for the alien fleet. Harvester ships that had been operating in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves isolated, their shared consciousness fragmented into confused individual nodes. Without their collective intelligence guiding them, they began attacking each other, mistaking fellow harvesters for threats. But victory came at a terrible price. The facility's destruction triggered defensive systems that turned the entire planet into a weapon. Energy beams lanced upward from the surface, and Jin's navigation console exploded in a shower of sparks and shrapnel. Without thinking, Captain Bo threw himself across the bridge, his body shielding the wounded pilot from the deadly fragments. The metal shards that would have killed Jin instantly embedded themselves in his back and shoulders, his Deathworld-hardened physiology allowing him to survive injuries that would have been instantly fatal to most species. "Boss," Jin gasped, her face pale with shock and pain from her burns. "Get us out of here," Bo growled through gritted teeth, feeling the warm wetness of blood soaking through his uniform. Mission accomplished. The surviving human ships limped away from the dying Harvester homeworld, their hulls scarred and their crews wounded but victorious. Behind them, the planet's surface cracked and heaved as the quantum facility's destruction triggered chain reactions that would eventually tear the world apart. Word of their victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Deathworlders, the species that everyone feared for their violence and unpredictability, sacrificed everything to protect the most vulnerable beings in the universe. They had faced impossible odds and survived conditions that would have killed any other known species. All for the sake of strangers who could offer them nothing but gratitude. For the first time in galactic history, humanity's reputation as dangerous survivors served the cause of protection rather than conquest. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything, and Captain Bo still couldn't quite believe what his life had become. He stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, running his fingers along the scars that crisscrossed his shoulders and back. The injuries had healed completely, but the marks remained, and somehow they'd become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council had done something unprecedented in their 1,000-year history. They'd created an entirely new classification for humanity. Not as a dangerous species to be contained, not as primitives to be civilized, but as protectors of the vulnerable. It was a title that came with full galactic citizenship and the authority to intervene whenever peaceful species were threatened. "Captain, you need to see these new modifications," called Dr. Yu from her science station. She'd been promoted to diplomatic science officer, a position that hadn't existed before humans proved that warfare and xenobiology could work together. The bridge around them looked nothing like the crude mining vessel it had once been. Etherean. Crystalline processors hummed with harmonic frequencies, their musical computations solving problems that traditional computers couldn't handle. The crystal technology could process information at quantum speeds while creating beautiful music as a byproduct. Quantum computers from the Whisperlings sat alongside the crystal systems, their consciousness-based processing allowing for intuitive leaps that purely logical systems could never make. These machines didn't just calculate, they genuinely thought. Bringing alien perspectives to human problems, the gentlefolk had contributed bioluminescent displays that provided perfect lighting for all species aboard. The organic screens could shift their spectrum to match whatever beings were using them, creating work environments that were comfortable for crystal-based Etherians, gaseous Whisperlings, and photosynthetic plant people all at the same time. "The technology sharing has been incredible," you continued, pulling up reports from across the fleet. "The Etherians' harmonic science has revolutionized our communication systems. We can now send messages instantly across galactic distances using crystalline resonance networks. The Whisperlings have taught us about consciousness-based computing, and the Gentlefolk have shown us agricultural techniques that could feed entire planets using minimal resources. Pilot Jin looked up from her navigation console, and Bo still marveled at the changes in her. Injuries from their final battle had required extensive reconstruction, but Etherian crystal prosthetics had replaced her damaged nerves and bones. The result was that Jin could now pilot ships with reflexes faster than any purely biological being, her thoughts transmitted directly through crystal interfaces. "It's amazing how much we've all changed," Jin said, her fingers dancing across controls that responded to her crystalline neural implants. 6 months ago, we were just miners, trying to make a living in dangerous space. Now what are we exactly? Bo looked out the bridge windows at their fleet. Human industrial ships flew in perfect formation alongside sleek council vessels, and the elegant biomechanical craft that had been designed by their former refugees. The Etherians had built ships that looked like flying crystal cathedrals, their hulls singing as they moved through space. The Whisperlings traveled in vessels that were barely there at all, quantum containment fields shaped into ship-like forms. The Gentlefolk had grown their ships from specially modified plants, creating living vessels that could repair themselves and photosynthesize fuel from starlight. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Pilot Jin as she threw their ship into another impossible maneuver. "Life support is failing in the engine compartments." The mining vessel Iron Resolve had taken damage that would have destroyed most ships, but its crew kept fighting from sealed emergency compartments, using backup systems and jury-rigged equipment to maintain their defensive screen. They were buying time with their lives, holding off the Harvester defenses long enough for Sue's team to plant their charges. "Charges are set," Sue's voice came through the static. "But I need another 10 minutes to reach the core processors. The quantum entanglement matrix is deeper than we thought." "Duh." Bo looked at his tactical displays and felt his heart sink. They didn't have 10 minutes. The Harvester drones were overwhelming their defenses, and his ships were falling apart under the sustained assault. Jin was performing miracles at the pilot controls, but even her skills couldn't keep them alive much longer. "Do it now," Bo ordered, as the Iron Resolve's hull began buckling under concentrated fire. "We can't hold them much longer." Sue didn't argue. She triggered the demolition charges in sequence, watching as explosions rippled through the alien facility. The quantum disruption waves spread outward like digital lightning, severing the connections that held the Harvester consciousness together. Across the galaxy, the effect was immediate and catastrophic for the alien fleet. Harvester ships that had been operating in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves isolated, their shared consciousness fragmented into confused individual nodes. Without their collective intelligence guiding them, they began attacking each other, mistaking fellow Harvesters for threats. But victory came at a terrible price. The facility's destruction triggered defensive systems that turned the entire planet into a weapon. Energy beams lanced upward from the surface, and Jin's navigation console exploded in a shower of sparks and shrapnel. "Without thinking, Captain?" Bo threw himself across the bridge, his body shielding the wounded pilot from the deadly fragments. The metal shards that would have killed Jin instantly embedded themselves in his back and shoulders, his Deathworld-hardened physiology allowing him to survive injuries that would have been instantly fatal to most species. "Boss," Jin gasped, her face pale with shock and pain from her burns. "Get us out of here," Bo growled through gritted teeth, feeling the warm wetness of blood soaking through his uniform. Mission accomplished. The surviving human ships limped away from the dying Harvester homeworld, their hulls scarred and their crews wounded but victorious. Behind them, the planet's surface cracked and heaved as the quantum facility's destruction triggered chain reactions that would eventually tear the world apart. Word of their victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The Deathworlders, the species that everyone feared for their violence and unpredictability, had sacrificed everything to protect the most vulnerable beings in the universe. They had faced impossible odds and survived conditions that would have killed any other known species, all for the sake of strangers who could offer them nothing but gratitude. For the first time in galactic history, humanity's reputation as dangerous survivors served the cause of protection rather than conquest. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. Captain Bo still couldn't quite believe what his life had become. He stood on the bridge of the Iron Resolve, running his fingers along the scars that crisscrossed his shoulders and back. The injuries had healed completely, but the marks remained, and somehow they'd become a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. The Galactic Council had done something unprecedented in their 1,000-year history. They'd created an entirely new classification for humanity. Not as a dangerous species to be contained, not as primitives to be civilized, but as protectors of the vulnerable. It was a title that came with full galactic citizenship and the authority to intervene whenever peaceful species were threatened. "Captain, you need to see these new modifications," called Dr. Yu from her science station. She'd been promoted to diplomatic science officer, a position that hadn't existed before. Humans proved that warfare and xenobiology could work together. The bridge around them looked nothing like the crude mining vessel it had once been. Etherean crystalline processors hummed with harmonic frequencies, their musical computations solving problems that traditional computers couldn't handle. The crystal technology could process information at quantum speeds while creating beautiful music as a byproduct. Quantum computers from the Whisperlings sat alongside the crystal systems, their consciousness-based processing allowing for intuitive leaps that purely logical systems could never make. These machines didn't just calculate, they genuinely thought. Bringing alien perspectives to human problems, the gentlefolk had contributed bioluminescent displays that provided perfect lighting for all species aboard. The organic screens could shift their spectrum to match whatever beings were using them, creating work environments that were comfortable for crystal-based Etherians, gaseous whisperlings, and photosynthetic plant people, all at the same time. "The technology sharing has been incredible," you continued, pulling up reports from across the fleet. "The Etherians' harmonic science has revolutionized our communication systems. We can now send messages instantly across galactic distances using crystalline resonance networks. The Whisperlings have taught us about consciousness-based computing, and the Gentlefolk have shown us agricultural techniques that could feed entire planets using minimal resources." Pilot Jin looked up from her navigation console, and Bo still marveled at the changes in her. The injuries from their final battle had required extensive reconstruction, but Etherian crystal prosthetics had replaced her damaged nerves and bones. The result was that Jin could now pilot ships with reflexes faster than any purely biological being, her thoughts transmitted directly through crystal interfaces. "It's amazing how much we've all changed," Jin said, her fingers dancing across controls that responded to her crystalline neural implants. 6 months ago, we were just miners, trying to make a living in dangerous space. Now we what are we exactly?
Ow!
Looked out the bridge windows at their fleet. Human industrial ships flew in perfect formation alongside sleek council vessels, and the elegant biomechanical craft that had been designed by their former refugees. The Etherians had built ships that looked like flying crystal cathedrals, their hulls singing as they moved through space. The Whisperlings traveled in vessels that were barely there at all, quantum containment fields shaped into ship-like forms. The Gentlefolk had grown their ships from specially modified plants, creating living vessels that could repair themselves and photosynthesize fuel from starlight. "We're protectors," Bo said simply. "We're the people who step in when someone needs help." As if on cue, Jin's console chimed with an incoming priority transmission. "Message from Sanctuary World Prima," she announced. "They're detecting unusual ship movements in the Outer Rim sectors. Unknown species, aggressive behavior, patterns moving toward inhabited systems." Bo felt that familiar feeling in his stomach, the combination of dread and determination that came with knowing innocent people were in danger. But this time, he wasn't facing the crisis alone. Around the bridge, Etherian crew members began harmonizing calculation songs, whisperling consciousness patterns swirled with tactical analysis, and gentle folk bio displays bloomed with navigation data. All ships. This is Captain Bo, he announced over the fleet-wide channel. We've got another situation developing. Unknown hostiles threatening peaceful systems. All vessels prepare for hyperspace jump. The response was immediate. Human voices, mixed with crystalline songs, gaseous thought patterns, and photosynthetic biorhythms as the integrated fleet acknowledged orders. Hundreds of beings from 4 different species worked together with the smooth efficiency that only came from shared purpose and mutual respect. You know, Jin said as she began plotting their course, 6 months ago, the galaxy saw us as dangerous monsters from a death world. Now they call us when they need heroes. Bo smiled as he watched their impossible fleet prepare to jump into unknown danger. They'd started as miners and engineers, just trying to make a living in the harsh frontier of space. The galaxy had feared them for their violence and unpredictability. But in the end, they'd found their true calling not as conquerors or destroyers, but as guardians who used their strength to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. All ships ready for jump, Jin reported.
Take us to hyperspace,
Bo ordered. It seems the galaxy needs its protectors again. As the stars stretched into lines of light, the most unlikely alliance in galactic history raced toward another crisis, proving once again that being dangerous and being good weren't mutually exclusive.